back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast. The second half of the show here about to begin in a few seconds. But if you missed the last segment, I talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers, some comments made by Terry Bradshaw, and just branching out after those comments, what it could mean for the Steelers, some of my ideas of what has led to some of the struggles and what could be just on the horizon if some moves were to be made, and through the draft coming up, free agency, what their quarterback situation could look like and what it could mean for them. I was going to talk about Saquon Barkley now, his recent Instagram activities, and it has a lot of people talking about, like he's about to join this team because of this, similar to the Justin Fields stuff. And I'll get into that, but right before I do, I want to please remind you guys again to use the tip and donations link there running across the ticker with any questions that you may have during the show, want to engage with it. Using this link there just puts the question at the top of the list, and I'm able to see it better, see it pop up here down the line as they come in. And it's a big help for the network, the show, and everything if you guys were able to do that with any question that you may have. The tip and donations link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, the tip and donations link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Greatly appreciate it if you guys could do that with any questions that may pop into your guys' head during the show. Greatly appreciated. But the third segment, like I mentioned, Saquon Barkley giving away some hints of where he could end up this coming season. Again, social media is taking over the world. These guys are always active. People look to these outlets to get any tells, any indication of what these players could be doing, start any rumors, get any inclination that they could be leaning towards one way. Anyone's going to run with it. And Saquon Barkley on Instagram, it was reported on an article posted by CBS by Jeff Kerr. He stated that Barkley on his Instagram followed 4 Texans players: Brevin Jordan, Tank Dell, CJ Stroud, and Nico Collins. Now, already that is ringing alarm bells because on this show I've talked about it. I thought that Saquon Barkley, were he to go to the Houston Texans, could make this team a perennial AFC conference contender. I think with what Saquon's able to offer them on a minimal contract, like I talked about yesterday with the running back market being not so friendly to the running backs, but being extra friendly to the organizations, the teams, getting Saquon on a minimal deal like that, probably $9 million per year for the next 3 to 4 years, while he's still in his tip-top physical prime, I think would make this Houston Texans team reach another level that they just weren't able to, and I think was lacking when you saw them play against the Ravens. They had some good moments offensively. CJ Stroud, it was his first time being in the playoffs. He was just a rookie, and a lot of those guys were young. They didn't have Tank Dell in that game. Devin Singletary is a solid back. I think he did very well in Houston to kind of bounce back from his time in Buffalo, where he had decent numbers, but I think he took it up a level with Houston and what they were able to do. DeMeco Ryans, rookie head coach, did a great job. Really all over the team, from offense to defense, did a great job with them. And now after that sort of honeymoon first season, now it's going to get a lot more serious for the Houston Texans. They're going to be the hunted definitely in their division because I don't see any of the other teams really making a push for it other than the Jaguars because they had a great start to the season, but then they tailed off at the end. But then the Colts, they're trying to bring in Anthony Richardson and bring him along, but he struggled with injuries. They had Gardner Minshew there, and you kind of almost have to restart the situation to a sense with Anthony Richardson, get him on his feet again, get him to build a rhythm finally with the Colts, because it always seemed last year that he was about to reach that rhythm, get into a flow, and then he got hurt, and then it got pretty serious with I think he got multiple concussions, and it wasn't really getting better from there. They just stuck with Minshew. Then you have the Titans, and they're in a full transition period because of the firing of Mike Vrabel. Will Levis is now, kind of got the keys of the kingdom handed to him. He's going to be probably the franchise guy going forward. He showed some good flashes. I saw him play just because I saw him play against the Steelers. He played very well in that game. He seems very poised and very, he's not afraid of the moment of making throws, sitting in the pocket, taking a hit. He's very good at that. He's very fearless, and I think he's going to do good there with the Titans, but, it's going to be his second year. He's not ready, in my opinion, to compete really at the highest level with these other guys in the AFC. And you have DeAndre Hopkins there, obviously still, but you're most likely going to lose Derrick Henry. And that leaves you with pretty much only Hopkins. Okonkwo was good, their tight end. He's athletic. He's a solid tight end option, but they're going to need way more to compete in the AFC. And they need to find some more receivers. They're probably going to target that through the draft, and try to just start this process over with Will Levis and a new head coach coming in. And I think it'll be good for them that they kind of it takes a lot to start over this process, and I think it'll be good for them. But they're not going to be ready, in my opinion, for a few seasons. So that only really leaves the Texans. And a lot of times you see with these teams that have these young quarterbacks, the really good organizations that invest in these quarterbacks, that see them have a good first season, and they're not satisfied with it, they go out and get them more help, more receivers, more offensive line help. They do whatever they can to go out there and help their rookie quarterback, especially if they had a bad season. You got to go out there and help them, but it's easy to think that because this guy had a phenomenal first year like CJ Stroud had, to just, kind of kick it back a little bit, over-rely on him, and then if he plays bad next year, it throws everything into a loop. The really good organizations go out, get more help regardless, get more support for their quarterback to build on their successes, not leave them satisfied with what they did. It's what comes next that's always the hardest, especially the second year, because there's now expectations there for CJ Stroud, the Houston Texans. It's his performance and the performance from all these young guys like Tank Dell. Nico Collins is still a young receiver in the league. It's revitalized the whole city of Houston that was a pretty constant playoff contender a few years back when they had Bill O'Brien, Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins. Then that whole situation with Deshaun Watson happened and Bill O'Brien, and then it all just started losing its momentum. All the pieces just started falling off, and everybody left, and then they just left the Texans to in a really bad situation. And just really instantly, in a short amount of time, after they had that period with Davis Mills as their quarterback, they brought in DeMeco Ryans. He established the defense a little bit more with Christian Harris. They drafted Will Anderson. They had a boatload of picks. Their defense, like I just mentioned, is young. They identified themselves with defense first, and then once C.J. Stroud came in, it all flowed and all connected very easily, because I think it's a good thing to have all these young guys in there. They're able to bond a lot quicker if they're all around the same age and all trying to figure this out together. It's like a whole big extended draft class over the last 2 to 3 years that these guys are able to bond over, share stuff with, and grow together. And I think that was a big part of their success this year. And to add to that, they just had a very good first year. Their defense is great with Jalen Petrie, Steven Nelson, Christian Harris, Will Anderson, like I mentioned. Now, how can you build on that? And that's where Saquon Barkley comes in, where this whole conversation started. Get that X factor running back that adds to this offense, because the offense was explosive. It shocked a lot of people how well CJ Stroud played. But again, those expectations come in. Teams are able to game plan around you. So you got to bring in that different X factor catalyst sort of player that can switch up the identity of this team, switch up rhythms, the pace of it. A lot of times CJ Stroud was throwing a lot in games last season, and you kind of want to take that pressure off of him. You bring Saquon in, a guy of his caliber, still 27 to 26 years old. He's able to take some of the pressure off of him. Better O-line situation, better offense. It's going to help CJ Stroud, like I mentioned, but it's also going to do wonders for Saquon, that came off a pretty solid season for being on the Giants, and everybody knows where the Giants are at right now. They're in like this very weird gray area where they're not really sure what to do with the quarterback because they paid him so much money. He put up 962 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns, 3.9 yards per carry, and had over 1,200 yards in scrimmage yards. Undoubtedly the best player, and he almost put up 1,000 rushing yards on that team. Imagine what he could do now with the Houston Texans, and just adding to that young core, being almost a veteran in a sense because of all those guys being young, like I mentioned. And I think not only the biggest thing will be that it'll help the Texans obviously a lot offensively when they're in those games against the Chiefs. Trying to keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline, running the ball is always the way to go, is always the solution that everybody brings up. Keeping Patrick Mahomes on the sidelines, taking your time on offense. If you bring in Saquon, it'll only increase your chances of doing that. And I believe it'll just take this team to a whole nother level, and it will make them a lot more exciting, fun to watch. And I'm hoping that this move happens because I was a fan of watching CJ Stroud and how easy he made it look. The young energy is always around the NFL with the young players. It's always cool to see, and if they're having a lot of success, it's a lot more fun to see them play. And I thought the Texans had a great first year, good first impression, made it to the playoffs, gave the Ravens a good run for their money until the second half of that game. And adding Saquon will only add to that. And I see very bright things happening for them in the future if they're able to make this type of blockbuster free agent signing for themselves and for CJ Stroud. And in the AFC, there'll be a big problem to deal with. For the other teams I wanted to talk about now in the last segment, the Jaguars and the Chargers are most likely to scenario coming up in the last part of the show. I'm going to send it to a quick break right now, and I'll talk about that on the other side of the break. Who is most likely to return to the NFL playoffs between the Jaguars and the Chargers? That conversation is coming up after this short break.